In Brookvale, 72-year-old Miriam notices James, a once rich man, secretly visiting an abandoned garage with a young girl nightly. What's the mystery? As debts loom, how will they escape creditors? And what unexpected twists await this odd, formed group? Hey everyone, welcome to Worldly Whispers. Let's get started. In the idyllic suburban neighborhood of Brookvale, life usually unfolds in a peaceful, predictable manner. However, recently, an unusual sight has been disturbing the tranquility, and it has caught the sharp eye of Miriam Watson, a 72-year-old widow. Maple Street, with its neat rows of middle-class homes and well-manicured lawns, has long been a picture of calm. But Miriam has noticed a nightly occurrence that seems out of place. Every evening, just as the sun dips below the horizon, a sleek black car glides down the street. Behind the wheel is James Harrow, a man who was once a prominent figure in the community. In his mid-30s, James used to exude wealth and sophistication. His mansion in the affluent part of town was a symbol of his success, and he was known far and wide for his charitable contributions to struggling families in the area. But now, things have changed. James, who was once a pillar of the community, has become a man shrouded in mystery. Beside him in the car is a young girl, Amara, no more than 7 or 8 years old. Amara is always dressed in a bright yellow dress, which makes her stand out, especially in contrast to James's usually muted and elegant attire. Their destination is always the same, an abandoned garage at the end of Maple Street. The dilapidated structure, with its peeling paint and rusted door, looks out of place among the well-maintained homes in the neighborhood. Miriam, whose days are often filled with observing the comings and goings of her neighbors, has made it a point to watch this nightly ritual. She sits by her living room window, her knitting often forgotten in her lap as she focuses on the street. As the weeks pass, her curiosity gradually turns into concern. She wonders what a wealthy man like James Harrow, known for his generosity, could be doing in an abandoned garage with a little girl night after night. James's behavior is particularly puzzling. He never interacts with anyone in the neighborhood. His face is always a mask of determined indifference as he ushers Amara from the car to the garage and back again. Amara, for her part, seems quiet and content on the surface. Her dress is always clean and pressed, and her hair is neatly braided. But Miriam, with her experienced eyes, has noticed a shadow in the girl's eyes. This shadow stirs a deep unease in Miriam's heart. As Miriam continues to observe, she becomes more and more convinced that something is wrong. She starts to imagine all sorts of scenarios, each more troubling than the last. Is James hiding something? Is Amara in some kind of danger? The rational part of her mind tries to dismiss these thoughts, reminding her that James has always been a respected member of the community. But the secrecy, the isolation, and the nightly visits to the garage are too much to ignore. One day, Miriam decides to bring up her concerns at the weekly book club meeting at the Brookvale Community Center. The center is a hub of activity in the neighborhood, where locals gather to socialize and discuss various matters. As the book club meeting concludes, Miriam, her hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea, decides to speak up. She starts by asking if anyone else has noticed the unusual activity in the neighborhood. The group, which includes Debbie, Tom, Lisa, and a few other regulars, leans in with curiosity. Miriam then reveals that James Harrow has been coming to their neighborhood every night for the past few months and staying in the abandoned garage at the end of Maple Street. She also mentions that he is not alone. There is a little girl with him. The reaction from the group is immediate and varied. Debbie's eyes widen in surprise, while Tom lets out a low whistle. Lisa looks thoughtful, her brow furrowed in concentration. Some in the group try to offer explanations. Lisa suggests that James might be helping the girl's family, as he has always been known for his charitable work. Debbie nods in agreement, recalling how James once helped the Johnson family keep their house after Mr. Johnson lost his job. However, Miriam is not convinced. She points out that it is strange for James to be doing this in an abandoned garage, especially with a child. Tom, on the other hand, tells Miriam not to jump to conclusions. He reminds her that James has always been a stand-up guy and that they should not pry into his private business. Lisa then questions Miriam's motives, asking if she is assuming something sinister just because the girl is black. Miriam is taken aback by this suggestion and vehemently denies it, stating that her concern is for the well-being of the child. Despite Miriam's attempts to convince her neighbors, they remain skeptical. Debbie gently suggests that Miriam might be reading too much into the situation, perhaps looking for something to focus on since her husband's passing. Miriam feels increasingly isolated as her concerns are dismissed or, worse, misinterpreted. But her resolve to uncover the truth only strengthens. She knows that she has to do something, even if no one else believes her. After the disappointing response from her neighbors at the community center, Miriam found herself increasingly isolated. Her neighbors, who had once been friendly and chatty, now seemed to keep their distance. Whispers and sidelong glances followed her whenever she stepped out of her house. It was clear that word of her obsession with James and Amara had spread throughout the neighborhood. But Miriam was undeterred. Her determination to uncover the truth only grew stronger with each passing day. Miriam's nightly vigils at her living room window became more intense. She would spend hours perched on her favorite armchair, the curtains slightly parted, her eyes fixed on the dilapidated garage at the end of the street. As the days wore on, she began to notice small details that she had overlooked before. James, who used to be impeccably dressed in sharp blue suits, now looked disheveled. His once neatly pressed suits seemed rumpled, as if he hadn't taken the time to care for them. Amara's bright yellow dress, which had initially been a cheerful sight in the gathering dusk, now appeared dull and worn. The fabric showed signs of frequent use, and the dress seemed a bit too small for the growing girl. One particularly cold November evening, Miriam decided to take her surveillance a step further. She bundled up in her warmest coat, pulled on a pair of sturdy walking shoes, and set out to follow James and Amara on foot. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slipped out of her house, staying close to the shadows cast by the bare trees lining the street. She felt a mix of excitement and fear, like a character in a mystery novel. But the memory of the mysterious visitor's threatening gesture towards James, which she had witnessed a few days ago, steeled her resolve. She tracked them to the local park, a place she had seen them visit several times before. From behind a large oak tree, Miriam watched as James and Amara settled onto a bench. The park was nearly deserted at this hour. The play equipment stood silent and ghostly in the glow of the street lights. James and Amara sat in an uncomfortable silence. Neither of them spoke, and they avoided making eye contact. Miriam strained to hear any conversation, but the only sounds were the rustle of dead leaves in the chilly breeze and the distant hum of traffic. As she watched, Miriam's heart clenched. Amara, in her worn-out yellow dress, was shivering in the cold night air. Without a word, James shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over Amara's small shoulders. The gesture was tender, almost paternal, and for a moment, Miriam felt a pang of doubt. Could she have misjudged the situation? But then she remembered the heated exchange between James and the mysterious visitor, and the fear she had seen in James's eyes. No, there was definitely more to this story than met the eye. Suddenly, the silence between James and Amara was broken. Miriam couldn't make out the words clearly, but Amara's voice rose in what sounded like distress. James responded, his tone low and urgent. Miriam inched closer, desperate to hear what was being said. "Can't keep doing this, Amara." James's voice drifted to her on the wind. "It's not safe anymore." Amara's response was too quiet for Miriam to catch, but she saw the little girl shake her head vigorously, her small hands clutching at James's arm. "I know, sweetheart," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know it's hard, but we might not have a choice." The conversation lapsed back into murmurs, too low for Miriam to hear. Her mind raced. What wasn't safe? What choice were they facing? The snippets she had overheard only deepened the mystery. Lost in thought, Miriam didn't notice the twig beneath her foot until it was too late. The snap sound seemed to echo through the quiet park like a gunshot. James's head whipped around, his eyes scanning the darkness. Miriam's heart leapt in her throat. She pressed herself against the tree trunk, hardly daring to breathe. For a long, tense moment, James stared in her direction. Then, abruptly, he stood up, taking Amara's hand. "Come on," she heard him say, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "We need to go now." Miriam watched, her pulse racing, as James hurried Amara out of the park. She waited until they were out of sight before sagging against a tree, her legs suddenly weak. The encounter had left her shaken, but more certain than ever that something was terribly wrong. As she made her way home, moving as quickly as her aging legs would allow, Miriam's mind was in turmoil. The snippets of conversation she had overheard played on repeat in her head. It's not safe anymore. We might not have a choice. What did it all mean? By the time she reached her house, Miriam was breathless and trembling, as much from the emotional weight of what she had witnessed as from the physical exertion. She sank into her favorite armchair, her eyes automatically seeking out the garage at the end of the street. It stood silent and dark, offering no answers to the questions swirling in her mind. Sleep eluded Miriam that night. She tossed and turned, her dreams filled with shadowy figures and muffled voices. She woke the next morning feeling drained, but more determined than ever to get to the bottom of the mystery. She knew that she couldn't keep this to herself any longer. She had to tell someone. And in her mind, the only option left was to go to the police. The morning after her eventful night at the park, Miriam woke up early, her mind made up. The image of James and Amara's troubled faces and their cryptic conversation still haunted her. Without hesitation, she got dressed, preparing to head straight to the police station as soon as it opened. She was determined to share all the strange happenings she had witnessed over the past months. As she was about to leave, Miriam caught sight of James's car pulling out of the garage much earlier than usual. Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't let them go, not before she could get the police involved. She knew she had to do something to stop them. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and keys and rushed out of the house. Miriam hurried down the street, her eyes fixed on the slowly moving car. As she got closer, she could see the tension in James's posture. His knuckles were white as he tightly gripped the steering wheel. Beside him, Amara's small face was visible, her eyes wide with fear. Miriam called out, "Wait, please wait." James's head snapped around at the sound of her voice. For a split second, Miriam saw a naked panic in his eyes. To her surprise, the car gradually came to a stop. James sat there for a long moment, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Then, slowly, he opened the door and stepped out. "Mrs. Watson," he said, his voice weary. "I thought I told you to stay out of this." Miriam approached cautiously, her hands held up in a placating gesture. "Mr. Harrow, James," she said, try to keep her voice calm. "I know you think you're protecting Amara, but this isn't right. Living in that garage, always hiding. It's no life for a child." James's face contorted with a mix of anger and despair. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low and intense. "You have no idea what's really going on here." "Then tell me," Miriam pleaded. "Help me understand. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're in some kind of trouble, and that little girl is caught in the middle of it." For a long moment, James remained silent. He stood there, the morning mist swirling around him, looking more lost and alone than Miriam had ever seen anyone. Then, almost imperceptibly, something in him seemed to break. "You're right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We are in trouble, but it's not what you think." Miriam took a step closer, her heart racing with anticipation. "What is it then?" she asked gently. "Please, James, let me help." James looked at her for a long time, as if weighing his options. Then, with a deep sigh, he began to speak. "I used to be wealthy," he said, his eyes distant. "I had it all. The mansion, the cars, the successful business. But then things changed. The market crashed, there were bad investments, a string of poor decisions. I lost everything." Miriam listened intently, her eyes wide with surprise. This was not at all what she had expected. "I couldn't bear the shame," James continued. "The thought of everyone knowing, of seeing the pity in their eyes. So I ran. I took Amara and what little money I had left, and we disappeared. But why here?" Miriam asked, gesturing towards the garage. "Why live like this?" James's face contorted with a mix of despair and resignation. "Where else could we go? I had no money for rent, no job prospects. This garage, it was the only place I could think of where we might be safe, where we could stay hidden until I figured out what to do next." Miriam's mind reeled as she tried to process this new information. All her suspicions of sinister activities now seemed so misplaced. It was a story of financial ruin and desperation, not something more malicious. "But the man who visited," she said, remembering the tense encounter she had witnessed. Who was he? James's face darkened. A creditor, he said bitterly. One of many. They've been searching for me, demanding money I don't have. That's why we have to leave. They found us, and it's not safe here anymore. Miriam felt a wave of compassion wash over her. She looked past James to the car, where Amara sat, watching them with wide, frightened eyes. The little girl who she had been so worried about was indeed in a difficult situation, but not in the way she had imagined. "Oh, James," she said softly, "why didn't you ask for help? There are people here who would have understood." James shook his head, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I couldn't," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I was too proud, too ashamed. And now it's too late." Miriam's mind raced. She thought of her own comfortable home, standing mostly empty during the day. She thought of the community that James had once been an important part of, even if they didn't know his current situation. "It's not too late," she said firmly. "James, listen to me. You don't have to run anymore. Let me help you." James looked at her, hope and doubt warring in his eyes. "How?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Miriam straightened her shoulders, feeling more confident than she had in a long time. "First," she said, "you and Amara are coming to stay with me. No arguments. We'll figure out how to handle these creditors, how to get you back on your feet, and we'll do it discreetly." James stared at her, his expression a mix of disbelief and desperate hope. "You do that for us?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Miriam nodded firmly. "Sometimes," she said, "we find family in the most unexpected places. Now come on, let's get you and Amara settled. We have a lot of work to do, but we'll do it together." James hesitated for just a moment before nodding. As they walked back towards Miriam's house, with Amara trailing behind them, Miriam felt a sense of purpose. The mystery was solved, but in many ways, their journey was just beginning. Back at Miriam's house, a new chapter of their lives began. After showing James and Amara to the spare bedroom, Miriam and James had a private conversation in the kitchen. James, with a serious expression, asked Miriam if they could keep their situation private for the time being. He was particularly worried about the debt collectors. Miriam, understanding his concerns, readily agreed, assuring him that his privacy would be respected. As days passed, a quiet routine formed in Miriam's once solitary home. James, though grateful for Miriam's help, still carried the weight of his past mistakes. He often found himself on the back porch, lost in thought as he stared at the horizon. Miriam would frequently join him there, bringing a steaming mug of tea. In these moments of shared silence, Miriam would gently remind James of all the good he had done for the community in the past. She told him that everyone makes mistakes, and what truly matters is how one learns from them. James would listen, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, a mix of gratitude and regret in his eyes. With Miriam's help, James started to take steps towards rebuilding his life. Through one of Miriam's old contacts, he managed to secure a modest office job in a neighboring town. The position, mainly handling general administrative tasks, was a far cry from his former high-powered executive role. But James approached it with quiet determination. After his first week at work, he shared his thoughts with Miriam. "It's an adjustment," he admitted, "but it's a start, something to build on." Miriam nodded encouragingly, telling him that every journey begins with a single step, and he was on the right path. When James received his first paycheck, he insisted on contributing to the household expenses. Miriam initially refused, not wanting him to feel obligated. But James was adamant. "Please, Miriam," he explained sincerely. "It's not just about the money. It's about regaining myself, respect, about being responsible again." Understanding the importance of this to James, Miriam agreed to accept a small amount for rent. When James handed her the money, the sense of accomplishment in his eyes was palpable, and it touched Miriam deeply. Amara, too, was going through a positive change. Her enrollment in the local school marked a significant milestone. At first, she was shy and reserved, but as the days went by, she gradually opened up, making new friends and embracing her studies with enthusiasm. Her bright laughter now filled the house, bringing a new kind of warmth. However, their found peace was not without challenges. One day, a persistent debt collector called Miriam's home, asking about James. Miriam, taken aback at first, quickly composed herself. drawing on an inner strength she didn't know she had. She calmly handled the situation without revealing James's presence. She politely redirected the caller to the lawyer who was handling James's case. Her composed manner was enough to deter the debt collector for the time being. After the call, Miriam went to find James. She told him what had happened, and James was filled with gratitude for her quick thinking and discretion. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Miriam," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Miriam smiled and replied, "We're in this together, James. We'll get through all of this." As the seasons changed and autumn gave way to the first hints of winter, Miriam reflected on how far they had come. The abandoned garage at the end of Maple Street, which had once been the center of so much mystery and concern, now stood as a reminder of the difficult times they had overcome. James was making progress in his job, slowly but surely regaining his confidence. Amara was thriving in school, and her once shadowed eyes were now bright with happiness. Miriam felt a sense of contentment, knowing that she had played a part in helping them turn their lives around. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, sharing a meal and some light conversation, Miriam realized that the unexpected bond they had formed was more precious than she could have ever imagined. They were no longer just a woman, a man, and a girl thrown together by circumstances. They were a family, bound by compassion, understanding, and a shared hope for a better future. As winter firmly set in Brookvale, the cold outside mirrored the challenges that still lay ahead for James, Amara, and Miriam. The once abandoned garage at the end of Maple Street, now a relic of their troubled past, stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder of the hardships they had overcome and the new beginning they had embarked upon. James, determined to fully rebuild his life, continued to work hard his office job. Despite the long hours and the demanding tasks, he never complained. Each day, he would leave for work with a sense of purpose, and upon his return, he would immediately engage in studying financial management and business strategies. His goal was not only to pay off his debts, but also to one day regain his financial stability and be able to provide a better life for Amara. Miriam would often find him at the kitchen table, surrounded by books and papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. She would offer words of encouragement, telling him how proud she was of his determination. Amara, too, was flourishing. In school, she had become an active participant in various activities. Her teachers praised her for her intelligence and her kind heart. She had made a group of close friends, and they would often come over to Miriam's house to study or play. The once shy girl had transformed into a confident and cheerful child. Miriam would watch Amara and her friends with a warm smile, happy to see the girl's life filled with joy. Miriam, in the meantime, took on the role of a guiding light in their lives. She helped James create a detailed budget to manage his finances and deal with his debts. They would sit together, poring over numbers, and Miriam would offer practical advice based on her own experiences. She also played an important part in Amara's life, attending her school events and providing emotional support. Miriam's house, which had once been a quiet place, was now filled with laughter and the sounds of a lively family. However, the journey was not without its difficult moments. There were times when the pressure of the debts seemed overwhelming to James. He would have moments of self-doubt, wondering if he would ever be able to fully clear his name and start anew. During these times, Miriam would be there to comfort him. She would remind him of how far he had come and of the strength he had shown. "You've already overcome so much, James," she would say. "Don't let a little setback discourage you. We're in this together, and we'll get through it." One of the most challenging aspects was dealing with the remaining debt collectors. Although Miriam had managed to fend off the initial calls, they continued to be persistent. Some would send intimidating letters, and others would show up at the house unannounced. But Miriam and James were prepared. They would always refer them to the lawyer, and Miriam would stand her ground, protecting their privacy and their newfound peace. As the holiday season approached, a sense of hope and renewal filled the air. Miriam, James, and Amara decided to decorate the house together. They put up a Christmas tree, and Amara's eyes sparkled with excitement as she hung the ornaments. For the first time in a long time, James felt a sense of happiness and belonging. He looked at Miriam and Amara, and he realized how lucky he was to have found them. "Thank you, Miriam," he said one evening as they sat by the fireplace, "for everything. You've given me and Amara a second chance at life. Miriam smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. We've all found a second chance, James. This is what family is for. During the holidays, they also decided to reach out to the community. James, with Miriam's encouragement, volunteered at the local soup kitchen. It was a way for him to give back and to show the community that he was still the same person who had once helped so many. The neighbors, who had once been suspicious of him, now saw a changed man. They began to offer their support, and slowly but surely, James started to rebuild his relationships in the community. As the new year arrived, Miriam, James, and Amara stood on the porch, looking out at the snow-covered street. They made resolutions for the coming year. James resolved to continue working hard to pay off his debts and to build a better future for Amara. Amara wished to do well in school and to be a good friend to everyone. Miriam hoped that their family would continue to grow stronger and that they would all find happiness and fulfillment. The story of James, Amara, and Miriam was a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and second chances. What had started as a mystery that had troubled Miriam had turned into a beautiful journey of redemption and the formation of an unexpected family. And as they looked forward to the new year, they knew that whatever challenges came their way, they would face them together, united by the love and support they had found in each other.
If this story touched you, show your support by liking and subscribing. Your encouragement helps us keep sharing memorable stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.